Good evening, everyone. Welcome to day 7 of the webinar series D for Drones. As we've been saying over the last 7 days, yes, we want A for apple, B for ball, C for cow, and D for drone. The drone education in India for children has to become so normal that it doesn't feel very different for the children. Just the way we use mobile phones today or computers, just the way we had computer labs when we were growing up, we want to have drone labs in schools. And why? Because there is a future for drones, and we have seen over the last 7 days that everyone, each speaker which has come to our webinar has expressed that drone definitely has a very bright future in India, in not just terms of the jobs but even entrepreneurship. Or we are looking at making India one of the drone hubs for the whole world, kind of making a benchmark that may be it manufacturing or applications or research. We want India to be right there. With this vision, we come to the day 7 of our drones for education series. And today, to discuss very key points, we have amazing lineup of panelists. And the topics for the day today would be focusing on two important aspects. One is the policy, and the second is the curriculum, mainstreaming of the drone education into the curriculum, into the national curriculum. And how do we do that? What could be the challenges for it? And why should we do that? And to discuss that, we had the first speaker, Mr. Rajan Luthra, who is from Reliance Industries Limited and from the FICCI Drone Committee. He will be speaking about why India must have friendly policies, what are the drone policies in India which are evolving now, and what are the applications which industries like Reliance are probably looking at for drones. Next, we'll be having Mr. Roopak, who's a consultant for the defense and drones, and he'll be sharing his experiences with us. We'll be having Mr. Ashutosh Singh from DGCA, who will be highlighting about the ministry's approach or the Directorate of Civil Aviation into what are we looking at the drones and what kind of policies as well as the educational framework that we are looking at. And we'll be having Paul. Paul is from SheMax from Australia, who has been doing it for many years. Who SheMax, we have had a presentation from them on the third day. But today we'll be talking about the vision of inclusion as well as mainstreaming the education system for drones. And today we'll be having these speakers with us, and let's hear them out. So, for the first speaker of the day, I would like to request Mr. Rajan Luthra to please unmute yourself. Just hold on. Yeah. Rajan sir, you are live now, and you can unmute yourself and please begin your presentation. Thank you. So you need to unmute yourself. You're on mute.
You can hear me now?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Thank you.
Great. Just let me know when you can see my screen.
We can see your screen, sir. Thank you. And we can see you as well.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rajan Luthra. As Ruchi just mentioned, we are responsible for a lot of policy advocacy in FICCI as a dedicated committee on drones. We work with the industry as well as with the government in the initiatives which enable a lot of these policy and regulations around the use of drones, especially in the civil sector. I call drones as the next frontier because, in my view, we will see in the next 10 to 20 years drones becoming almost as important to every one of us as the automobiles have become over the last few decades. And I think it is very important that every one of us, including right from the school to the colleges, we have education and awareness about drones becoming available, and we are all using them in a safe manner. I will be covering in the next 5 minutes a little introduction about where is the industry headed, what are the changes which are happening in the regulations, where are the applications of drones, and how different skill sets need to be acquired for all of us to become a part of this nascent and upcoming industry. Uh, India has taken a lead in the area of drones because of a lot of startups that have come up in the last 5 to 7 years. Uh, in my view, drones is an area where the youth of India have taken a very significant step in not just trying to replicate what is happening all over the world, but also really innovating in a major way in creating a complete ecosystem around the drones, as we will discuss in the next few slides. This has now matured where companies like Reliance have now invested in startups, and we have become as a major player in the entire drone industry, which is now taking shape. Most of the corporates are now realizing that, like artificial intelligence and many other new technologies, drones is a very generic technology that will help in multiple use cases, as we will see in the next few minutes. Just as an example, in the last annual report, which was released by our chairman in the last week, the Reliance Industries annual report of FY 1920 talks about drones in a major way. In fact, it's mentioned 8 times. There was a research carried out 2 years back which talked about drones becoming close to $1 billion industry in the next 1 or 2 years. And several thousand jobs will get created this year and in the next few years. More than just the jobs, McKinsey, in a report which was published recently, talks about the impact of drones that will have on the economy. The USA, it believes, will have an impact of up to $46 billion in how drones will be utilized in various applications. FICCI and Ernst & Young have actually made multiple reports, which I presume are available on the web, and many of you should be able to read them and gain a lot of understanding about what this industry is about. At FICCI, we are working very closely with the industry, the startup ecosystem, as well as with the government stakeholders to support the drone regulations. Just this month itself, we have had inputs being given on the draft unmanned aircraft systems rules 2020 by the Ministry of Civil Aviation, where we took inputs from almost more than 50 plus people in the industry. And we shared our inputs as a collated document with the Ministry of Civil Aviation. Specifically to education, we have made one key recommendation that the nano drones, the smallest version of the drones, should be allowed to be used in the educational, recreational, and experimental purposes as model remote piloted aircraft systems in the designated areas. And we believe in the future you would have potentially each and every school or college considered as a designated area where drones can be used. In the last few months, the government has taken a very significant focus on allowing not just the defense or the police forces to use their drones, but even the government agencies and some private sector use of drones for even COVID-19 response, as well as the recent locust infestation in some of the northern states of India. Multiple experiments are already underway, which have been permitted for beyond visual line of sight of drones. And railways and Indian Oil have recently been given permission to have drones being utilized for track surveillance and pipeline inspection. More than anything else, I'm very confident that this Luthra scheme, which was announced by the Prime Minister of India on 24th of April for survey mapping of the entire 6,62,000 Indian villages, will really transform the way and not just for the drone industry, but the way our rural hinterland actually utilizes data and information systems for their welfare. Within this month, we had the first NPNT flight being taking place by Quidditch and Asteria Aerospace, which is now a Reliance Group company, performing the first flight using the digital sky platform. You will learn a lot more about this in the next few months as these things become more public. I've tried to capture here the 5 categories under which at a macro level drones are used today: for inspections and monitoring, for surveys and mapping, for surveillance and response to various events. The entertainment industry uses drones a lot for photography and videography at weddings and multiple events. And the last mile delivery, which catches a lot of attention from all the large e-commerce and other ecosystem of the retail industry. These 16 sectors that are listed here, among the top 5 are people who have been using drones for the last many years. And I think especially in the armed forces and police and paramilitary, drones have been used for many purposes and in the border areas as well as in the cities. But most of the commercial sector will start seeing the use of drones in the next few months and few years on an ongoing basis. And I think this is the area where all of you should be paying a lot of attention. To me personally, agriculture is one area which we will see the use of drones taking shape in a very significant manner, enabling the vision of our Prime Minister to double the farmers' income. Healthcare is another area where all over the world emergency supplies of medical medicines and as well as other equipment has been used using drones. Let me come to the skills that are available for making drones become a relevant industry. When we have in the next 4 years the Swamitpa scheme being launched, you will see almost every single village of India having the use of drones to capture the boundaries of the Abadi areas, the Lardora areas, and you will see the local youth becoming pilots of drone application and starting to map out the areas, not just the farmland, but also the so-called Abadi areas under the drone scheme. The autonomous systems, which we hope will become enabled as per regulatory policy in the next few years, combined with the flight controls, is another very interesting area where India has started taking some steps. Rogue drones is a big threat to not just the government critical infrastructure, but even for private sector. And I think counter drone systems using radars and RF scanners and RF jammers is going to take up a lot of shape. Multiple types of payloads are being developed, including multispectral, infrared, optical, as well as LiDAR imaging. And the data being generated then gets utilized for multiple applications. Drones, because they need to be very light so that they can stay in the air for a very long period of time, need precision manufacturing. Composites and advanced material development needs a lot of focus as well in the years to come. And obviously, once we have millions of drones out there in the air, operations and maintenance of these hardware will become very important. Let's move to the software and management. The entire drone, while it is a piece of hardware, but it needs a complete suite of software to manage it. We will need a complete suite of applications that manage drones at the back end. Digital Sky is a government application that allows the regulatory approvals for drones. Drone training, like the one of not just the awareness, but specific drone training will become important in every school and college. A lot of data scientists and business data analysts will start using drones for applying the information that is derived for business purposes. Artificial intelligence and machine learning will become very important once you generate all this amount of data. The traffic management, like you manage the road traffic or the traffic of your commercial aircraft, similarly, traffic management of drones will become very important. And then all the other aspects of typical uh, business management of drones as a complete industry. To me, one of the areas which is very important is helping design the user journeys and the workflows around drones, as well as the policy and regulatory aspects of bodies like FICCI and others that are helping the government in on the government approach to this important sector. Many colleges and institutes are taking up academic research in this specific area, and I think this will become more and more important going forward. With that, I think let me just switch over to the next speaker, and then we can have a discussion or question and answers towards the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rajan sir. Thank you so much. So we would move to our next speaker of the day. And I think I'll request Paul to first come online because you have a little more practical and hands-on approach towards education. Paul, could you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ruchi. Awesome. Yeah, look, more than happy to share. Let me just sort of try and navigate this here, Ruchi, and see. Cool. All right, can you see that, Ruchi?
Yes, Paul, it's about to come.
Awesome. So, yeah, look, I'll just sort of share a little bit about the story of SheMaps first off, just to give a little bit of a context here. And I really want to touch on a bit of that policy and that mainstreaming drones into curriculum. So I think there's some things that we've really learned over the last 4 years of running this program here in Australia, and then working with yourself, Ruchi, and others over in areas where drones are sort of really starting to emerge as well. So at SheMaps, we're about increasing that diversity in STEM, and what do we mean by that? Well, it's for us, it's about the STEM workforce here in Australia in particular is only 27% female. Now, the interesting thing is that India does a really good job of producing female STEM graduates straight out of university. But then there's also probably some other challenges around maintaining diversity in other sectors of your community over there, just as we've got that here in Australia. Interestingly, female drone pilots and aviation pilots are less than 6% of the workforce. And this is where we're going to unlock that potential of our STEM workforce. That diversity in thought really brings about different ways of solving problems. And I'm going to touch on that problem solving shortly as well, because that's actually a critical part of this drone industry that is emerging with us. And here's another part of that problem is that when we think about science, particularly over here in Australia, when we talk to kids about this, when you talk about STEM or science, they automatically think chemistry. And Google does a really good good one on this. You Google scientist and look at what the Google images bring up here in Australia. It'd be interesting to see you do this over in India as well, and whatever your favourite search engine over there. Look at the imagery of scientist, and for us, it comes up as someone in a white lab coat, test tube speakers, microscopes, and a lot of kids go, "Oh, I don't like science," or "I don't like STEM," because this is the image that they have in their mind. Combined with the lack of female role models in the STEM workforce, and for us here in Australia, a lot of the teachers, the teaching cohort is largely female, so they as they have been growing up, haven't been exposed to digital technology as part of their education. So there's a number of factors here that really we need to address in order to get our kids, as they're coming through school, to be equipped with digital technology skills. And what we find is that around that 6th to 7th year of schooling is that girls in particular self-select out of STEM subjects. And so you had us making some really strong decisions early on in their schooling around what they want to be and where they see themselves in the future. And that's because of a lot of the stereotypes, that unconscious bias that we have within our society. So where does policy really come into this? Because this is a really interesting one, and I think there's been some interesting ones here within Australia. We live in Queensland, which is a state within Australia, and 3 years ago they brought out a drones strategy, which was basically the Queensland government's strategy of how are they going to foster the drone industry here within the state, and to enable this industry to thrive. And I think they have done a really, really good job with this. Just recently, they've brought out the Queensland space industry strategy. So this here is looking at not only drones, that Earth observation perspective, but then also the space side with the rockets, the satellites, all that side as well. From a strategy point of view, it also drones play into citizen science. So how can people in their communities actually contribute to the collection of data to support the environmental challenges that we have in our world? And this one then plays into having that strategy for STEM in Queensland schools. And how do we bring those STEM skills, so science, technology, engineering, maths, into our schools? And I want to touch on that one shortly as well. Some very specific ones here as well around advancing women in STEM, with a national plan here around recognising that 27% of our STEM workforce is female, and that's not good enough as a country, and we need to be doing better. So having a plan of how we're actually going to do that. So we've got some really robust strategies here in Australia that we as an organisation understand and work towards there as well. But at the end of the day, the government, I feel, from a policy perspective, is there to enable the environment for the industry to thrive. And when we start to look at drones, well, what does a thriving drone industry look like, and how do we then bring this into our schools? And one thing that we've noticed over the last 4 years here in Australia is that the drone pilots, they're training kids up to become drone pilots is much like the internet cafes. We no longer have internet cafes here in Australia. That's sort of a thing of the past, because now the large majority of people are connected here in Australia through their smartphones or otherwise. But this is what drone pilots are going to be, because you're going to have a lot of automation come through with your drones very quickly. And so your drone pilots, as someone who just flies your drone, is going to become redundant quite quickly. But what we really want out of our students is we want three key things. We want them to be fantastic problem solvers. We want them to be able to think critically. And we want them to be very creative as well, because this wraps up innovation, right? And we talk about a design thinking process. So how do we get our students to think critically and creatively in order to solve problems? There's that design thinking process. And because the jobs that are being created now are actually for that higher order thinking, those higher order applications that we really want our students to be solving. Our last speaker spoke a little bit about the agriculture side and the huge potential that we've got there. So for me, for us, it's actually not about the drone, because the drone is just a tool, and that there is to help us solve problems. So we need students to understand what makes up a problem and how do I go about validating that problem and then working through a process to understand it and to design a solution to take to the market. Those entrepreneurial skills. We need to understand that automation is going to change the way of the world here, and we need to develop our kids to really think about what automation looks like, because we're not taking humans out of the loop, but we're just putting them into the loop in a different place. And so I think that there's a really important thing to understand. The other one that we're really passionate about is our SDGs. And drones have this amazing opportunity to really hit on a large number of these SDGs and just sort of the innovation that can be brought through. So that's something that we're really passionate about here. Could talk a little bit more about this, but how about Ruchi? I stop there and more than happy to talk more on a panel later on.
Thank you so much, Paul. This was really inspiring and really amazing. And we have some girls watching us online right now who are sending us hearts and smileys. Thank you so much. Because when we talk about technical education, when we talk about vocational education, especially where engineering matters, it's also manly. And it's difficult for girls like me, probably, to find place in a man's world. And drones have become, and especially in India, a complete man's industry, another industry which is completely male oriented. So we want to make a shift over there and gradually make a shift, of course, because you spoke about creative thinking and design thinking and empathy based projects or applications. And I think we girls are excellent at that. And I'm not saying that boys are not, but then we kind of bring in a little bit of metal and soft instinct when we start talking about engineering or even projects. So before we move on to the question and answer session, we have the next speaker of the day. I request Mr. Roopak Jakhmola to please unmute yourself, and so that we can hear about your journey and your experiences with drones. I know that you have traveled internationally talking about drones and various applications. So we would really like to learn from you that where does Indian institutions stand when it comes to competitiveness in drone industry, and are our children or our education system ready for it, and what do you feel about it? Mr. Roopak?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good evening. So this is going in a very interesting way, and Mr. Luthra spoke a lot. And he's actually given out all the points where we are as a country and what's happening in the drone industry. So I was in the Army. I served in the Army for 14 years, and I've been out of the Army since 2000, been working in the civil since then. Been involved with drones for the last 8-9 years, and this is both in defense and in commercial applications. Now, as far as so when we talk of drones, it's very, very vast. It's a huge field, and for children, when you're starting out and you think drones and you're interested in drones, it can be very intimidating because drones can be used in huge places, and you have the small drones, you have the big drones. The Army uses huge drones which can even fire a missile. But coming back to the school aspect of things, the thing is that there is a fun part in drones and there is a work part in drones. And I think that at the school level, I mean, at least as far as India goes, we need to start with the fun part so that the children really get interested. And for that, we must, in our schools, and I've been working with the skill councils, and I know Ruchi has also done a lot of work in training programs. I think the thing is that schools and universities or educational institutes at different levels should start off with setting up drone labs where children can actually experiment with the different facets of a drone. Because a drone, we just see flying in the sky. But behind that flying in the sky, there's a lot of physics involved, there is science involved, Paul talked of science being lab coat, and he's right, because people think that science is only about chemistry, but there's so much more to science than that. And so if we set up labs where children can understand that, okay, there is a manufacturing aspect of drones. How do you manufacture drones? There's a flying aspect of drones. There is a control aspect of drones. There is a software aspect of drones, and there are many facets. And if we have a lab in schools where children can be exposed to these building blocks of drones and be introduced to fun flying, they should initially not just think that, we tend that is a flying object. Once they're comfortable with something in the sky, that, and then we come to the aspect that ultimately a drone by itself is nothing unless it achieves aim. And then we graduate these children who have got shown interest and who are, who can do something with their hands and have the creativity to do something, into working on problem solving. So Paul very rightly said that we need to have people who can solve problems. And for that, what we can probably do, and the government can do, and maybe the skill council can do, is introduce a competition for districts at different levels, where a problem is given by someone like, say, FICCI or from the industry or from the government. A problem is given that this is a problem that we have, or this is something that we want. We may not have a problem, but this is something that we want. Maybe it's a swarm of drones working together to, let's say, seed a farm, for example, in agriculture. And we give this problem to the students, and I'm not saying give a big problem which they can't solve, but give something which they can solve. And they come up with solutions, and we have a skill competition on a state level, India level, whatever. But we have competition, because the moment you have a competition and the wherewithal is given to achieve something in that competition, what we will find is that children work towards creating a solution. And once we have, and those solutions can then be taken up by the industry and made into something practical and usable. And by the end of it, and with this, the whole ecosystem begins to grow. And the ecosystem is important, because one without the other is not going to work. You can have a lot of pilots. Everybody thinks of just, that we'll go fly a drone. But that's not it. Somebody's got to make the drone. Somebody's got to maintain the drone. Somebody's got to do the programming for the drone to fly. Somebody's got to be a telecommunication expert to make sure that the drones, you can receive the video, you can communicate with the drone. So all these different parts, these building blocks. So my focus, my thing is that we need to build these building blocks at the school level. And at least, if not, I know that we can't change the curriculum totally, but at least if they're introduced to these building blocks and they can begin to focus on them and then build solutions on them, then we may reach somewhere where further when they go into, they graduate from college and other places, they are ready to be absorbed by the growing drone industry. So that's what I have to say about drones. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Roopak. So we were expecting Mr. Ashutosh from DGCA to join us, which I don't think he has joined. So I request the panelists to please put on your videos so that we can have a kind of short question answer session amongst ourselves. Thank you so much. Okay. So Mr. Roopak, you can put on your video now. So we'll be having a short question answer session. So my first question to all of you is, we are a part of now Electronic Sector Skills Council of India, and we're talking about skill development on one hand, and we're talking about creative problem solving on the other. And is it possible to have the skilled labor that we're talking about to be available in, let's say, manufacturing or electronics or repairs or maintenance, also have creative problem solving skills, or like these are two different sets of people that we're talking about? Should there be a parallel between them, like there is any kind of intersection that we can develop, or they should develop as two separate tracks? What would you feel?
So I feel that it goes hand in hand, because the solution that you try and make, it will incorporate all facets. It's not just one part of the thing which can solve a problem. So you need a drone. Let's say I worked on a drone which required a 3-hour endurance, needed optics, needed a payload to be able to identify a human being at 1,500 meters. And there's lots. So a person can make a drone which can fly for 3 hours and not have the optical payload to achieve the aim there, all right? Or you can have everything and you can have a bad setup. I mean, you have a bad telecommunication setup and the drone, you lose communication or there's a communication issue. So that's my point, because it's not just one thing. Unfortunately, it's just not one thing. There are multiple things and we need, all this working together.
Well, I think my point of view is a little different. I think we have, as I mentioned in the slides, there is a so-called blue collar related activity and there is a white collar related activity. It's not really meant to be derogatory in any way. I think there are special skills that are required in both those areas. I think we need people who can work on the shop floor, people who can work on the hardware, people who can work on the precision manufacturing and all that. And then there are people who are more creative around what is the problem being solved, what is the solution being addressed, and how do you really think have a level of empathy to solve the customer-specific problems. And I think these are slightly different but complementary skill sets that you need to have. You need to target these in different category of people and students, both in schools and colleges, so that there are people who will be very good in developing hardware or in developing, let's say, going into the physical side of things. And then there'll be people who will be more into problem solving and into finding innovative solutions to addressing the problems. But yet, I agree with Roopak that these are complementary skills and they need to go hand in hand in solving the overall problem of the ecosystem.
I think, it's a really interesting one there, because let's define what are skills. And so, there's knowledge and there's skills. And so we are the education system, the Western education system is very, very good at imparting knowledge on our children. It is built for factory workers. Here's the knowledge that you need in order to do this on this conveyor belt, essentially. And now what we're asking is for skills to be developed and where they can take that knowledge, but then they can use that skillfully to create new information, right? And so when we're talking about skill development, or vet skills, over here in Australia we have very good vet training, vocational education training, and creates great craftsmen and craftswomen. But what we really want is, if you can build a drone, but that's fine, how all those pieces fit together, but can you build that drone to solve this problem here, and so that you put it together differently, because that's skill, all right? And so I think that that's where we really want our students to be, is having the requisite knowledge on how things work, but then the skill is in that application of in the problem solving to put that knowledge to good use.
Yes.
Paul, when you are in a group of with a group of students in a school, do you feel that some children have more inclination towards the creative aspect, the application aspect, and some might find coding more interesting, or some might find that the structure of how the drone is made is probably more interesting? And do you feel that there are three different sets of students, or you feel that they're all merged together and any child can develop into anything?
They're only interested in those sorts of things because of their background and the environment they've been exposed to. So we find that children as young as 5 or 6 years old start to develop that unconscious bias around who does what in the world and what they can be. So can any child be creative or be interested in coding? Yeah, absolutely. But this is why it's so important to start young. And what we find is that particularly universities and industry start to target kids in their later years of schooling to say, hey, how about you come and have a job here with us? But they're all only targeting those ones that have already selected through multiple years of what they want to be. We've lost a whole lot of the rest of our talent pool earlier on. So, can our children be creative and it doesn't matter where they come from? Yeah, absolutely. We've got to look at that experience that they have early on.
So probably the motto should be that in the early years, you give them all kind of exposure and
Right.
let them grow through their own creativity. And at least don't deter them saying that, what, you are only good for this and you're not good for that, something like that. Just let them explore their own potentials, right?
Absolutely. And have really strong role models so they can see it to be it. Because at the end of the day, a young girl is not going to look up to an old man like me, right? It's not going to happen. So we need to have those relatable people in front of our children that they can go, I want to be like that person.
Interesting. So I remember when Natalie was here, she was saying that every district you try to find some local leaders, some local influential people who have been using drones, and then you bring them to the class and let them talk to the children about what they do and get inspired by their stories, right?
Absolutely. It's got to be relatable, right? If it's a target that's too far out in the future, for young kids, they can't see it. They got to touch, feel, imagine what they can be.
So, Rajan sir, can we bring our children to your Reliance Industries drone projects to make them see what you do?
No, I think that is always open, but the key really is about exposing in the kind of drone labs that we spoke about. I think the real thing is not to take people specifically, or especially children in both schools and colleges to go and visit and undertake maybe some internships in the industry, which is important. But I think at the very early stage, I think we need to start exposing the children about the potential of what this industry offers, both practically and even theoretically, at a very early stage. My view is we really need to focus on letting these drone labs become more and more interesting as to how can you use the simple technology which is out there using some kind of a hardware, some kind of software to really start solving problems, and what are the type of problems. One of the most fascinating problems for me that I believe is seriously out there for us all to collectively solve is about the construction industry. Now, that's one of the most, let's say, mechanized industry, which is very manpower intensive. How do you automate something like that in using drones, not just outdoors, but even indoors to do a lot of tasks that are typically manpower intensive and many a times dangerous? How do you use drones to drive safety for even your workforce? Many of us operate in hazardous industries. How do you use drones to do typical inspections or validations inside hazardous areas? I think it's really, we are at the very, very nascent stage of this whole ecosystem, and I think the applications as well as the sensors and the use of data and machine learning is only going to keep growing as we start gathering more and more applications around this.
Also, Rajan sir, a lot of, I come across people just give me a call and say that we need a particular state government is demanding 100 drones, 200 drones, and they're releasing an RFP and demanding a lot of drones very quickly. So, how hasty should we be in our approach in building this skill pool that we're talking about in India? And what do you think should the timeline look like? If you, let's say, you're talking about even FICCI, you were talking with various industries and various drone applications in all the industries. So where do you see the timeline could be? Like how quickly these skill sets should be developed?
Unfortunately for us, everything is as of yesterday basis, and I think we are already lagging behind in developing the skill sets. The industry as well as the government are already moving ahead. There is this whole Swamitwa project, which in the next 4 years is going to map out, as I said, 6,62,000 villages. And there is an opportunity to train not just in the urban schools as such, but even in the hinterland, taking the young people who have a good hand and eye coordination and in training them and certifying them as pilots and potentially using them rather than transporting pilots from the urban areas. So I think there is a whole opportunity out there for fast tracking the whole the skill development opportunity. And it's not very complex. It need not take multiple years of becoming a drone pilot. It can be done in a short time frame. It can be done by certified educational institutions. There were discussions which are happening out there, which I think as early as next week, you will get to hear some certifications around this. These bodies who are imparting such training.
Thank you for that. So I think we need to really gear up very quickly, and even we as content developers or as educators or as coaches or as mentors for these students, even we need to hurry up, because when I hear the demands that we need 200 drones maybe next week, I have no idea where to hunt for them in the entire country, because I don't know how quickly the manufacturers can scale up their production, and whether those kind of investments are available, or whether that kind of capacity building is available to even double up the manufacturing capacity. So
I think the industry will solve their part of the supply and demand problem. I think we need to focus on the supply of the trained stakeholders from the both as pilots as well as people who need to manage all the back end work that needs to go around.
sure.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And so let me just check if there are some more questions from the audience, from a live audience. Okay, not significantly. Okay, fine. So before we come to the close of this webinar, I would request if anybody has any closing remarks before I move to ESSCI to give their closing remarks. Okay. I request Varun from Electronic Sector Skills Council of India to please come online, unmute yourself so that we can hear you, and a closing remark not just for the webinar today, but also for the webinar series, and help us get a roadmap about how do we proceed further, and what is it in line for Project Wing, for for Caerobotics, and for ESSCI in the future, and what kind of spanning of the skills are we looking at? Thank you.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you, Ruchi, and good evening to everyone. This is really a remarkable journey of 7 days series of webinar that we have conducted. And special thanks to Ruchi and the Caerobotics team, along with the ESCCI team, Aman, Shiv, and everyone was there. They were, completely working day in all the panelists. So I'm really thankful to all of you. It's really a great journey. And a special thanks to all the panelists as well, those who have come today, and all the 7 days. It's been a great discussion, really, really helpful. And we already have developed a particular qualification pack that we want to circulate it into the school curriculum, and we want to have those curriculum being to be taught at the early level. But in this 7 days of this webinar, we have got to know a lot. And honestly speaking, even we were not having that much clarity and visibility that how we gonna frame our next step, how we gonna approach, and what are the skill set that would be required. But now I'm very much sure the team has got the fair idea. Now the team is very well versatile with the things what needs to be done and what not need to be done. And the panelists that we had today and in the last 7 days, there's been a lot of discussion about in skills basically, and that is what is required. What appropriate skill sets at what age, and what are the current demand. And it's not always about the job basically. Every time when we talk about the skills, we always talk about the industry demand, industry jobs, and things like that. But if we are able to incorporate some specific skills maybe through drone technology or through any kind of technology, whether it's robotics, it's AI, it's IoT. It's always helpful for a candidate. So that's the purpose actually. But drone being one of the object which has a lot of integration of various technologies. It has motors, it has batteries, it has physics, it has thermodynamics. So a lot many things are there. So that's the beauty of this product. That's why even I also want through this, and it's a very fascinating object. When we talk someone, when we talk to any kid and we tell them, "Okay, it's like a game," and but with the virtue of that game, you can learn lot many things, and that is what required: experiential learning, practical learning. Or we can say learning while playing. So lot many things can be done. So yes, and I'm very happy to share with you all now our the curriculum that we initially prepared. We have modified it, and Roopak sir is here with us. He has given us a lot of inputs on that curriculum. I'm very thankful to him. And we have various other experts and industries personals as well who have given us the input, and I'm very happy to share with you all. We have as well, phase in phases, of course. The phase one would be what we want to try with, first of all, with the schools, and we already had got various proposals from Delhi government schools. I discussed with one of the top government officials in Delhi, and they were very happy when I told them that we are conducting this webinar series, and I showed them my curriculum as well. So they were very happy with that, and they have given us a go ahead, and they have told us that they want to include this drone. I mean, not specific by the name drone, but with with under the STEM education system basically. So they want to include this thing, and very soon you will see we, along with Caerobotics and other knowledge partners that we have just made a partnership with, we would be launching sets and lot of special request to all of you, like whosoever, all of you people are expert in this area. So as much as you can devote your time, I know we all people are busy among our all schedules that we have of our official work, but as much as you can devote, because we're gonna continue this webinar series in future as well. It's not the end of a phase of a series, but it's a beginning of a new era. So I'll request everyone, whenever you have any kind of inputs for us or any suggestion for us, because we under Skill India mission really want this drone technology and STEM based education system where practical learning is more emphasized than the theoretical learning. That's our objective. So thank you to all of you, each one of you from bottom of and I, Varun Bhatia from side. Thanks, Ruchi. Special thanks to you, of course, and all the panelists and all the team in India Mission, where even our Prime Minister wants like India to be the skill capital of the world, and so lot many things are been talked about. So we really want to put our stone as well in this foundation, and looking forward for the long-term partnership and suggestion and feedback from all of you. So thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot.
So, once again, thank you very much. We as Caerobotics and as India Flying Labs, we do conduct regular courses online as well as in person with a lot of multi-stakeholder groups. We just last month we had something called Advanced Course in Drones for Development, which was absolutely well received. And the way we spoke about the design thinking and the creative aspect of it, we did propound on that. And me myself are I'm into design thinking consulting, so we definitely do it a lot. And I really hope that with Project Wings launching, we will be able to work a lot with school students and with the educators from the schools and make them into coaches for drones, into drone projects, and come up with amazing creative projects with the help of SheMaps methodology that they already have, and bring it to the schools all across the country. So with this, thank you very much for joining us for this webinar series. I thank all the panelists here to share their for sharing their views and with their experiences so generously with all of us. I thank you once again from the bottom of my heart and hope to see you in the future very soon. Thank you everybody for watching us live. See you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye bye.